You'd think moving into a new home would be a fresh start, a chance to breathe easy and settle into a quiet life. That's what I, Daniel Harper, a freelance data analyst, hoped for when I inherited my grandmother Evelyn's house in Willow Creek, a postcard-perfect suburban neighborhood. I'd left the chaos of city life behind, craving peace for myself and my 13-year-old golden retriever, Buddy, who'd been my rock since Evelyn passed 6 months ago. But on my very first day, before the moving boxes were even unpacked, I found myself staring down a 911 call not for a crime, but for walking Buddy in my own backyard. That's when I met Cynthia Brooks, the HOA president, a woman whose scream could shatter glass and whose obsession with control hid a secret so dark it would unravel her empire and turn our sleepy neighborhood into a battleground. It was a sunny afternoon when I let Buddy out to explore the backyard, a sprawling oasis compared to our old apartment's cramped balcony. Mature maples shaded the grass, and I was already picturing lazy weekends grilling out here. Buddy, his muzzle graying but his spirit bright, sniffed eagerly along the fence, his tail wagging like he'd found paradise. Then, like a thunderclap, Cynthia appeared next door, marching toward me with the kind of purpose that screamed trouble. In her late 40s, with flawless auburn hair and an outfit that cost more than my rent, she looked like she'd been born to judge people's lawn choices. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice sharp enough to startle Buddy. "This neighborhood has strict pet regulations, and I don't recall approving any animals on this property." I tried to explain that I'd just moved in, that Buddy had lived here with Evelyn years ago, a model dog who'd never bothered a soul. But Cynthia's eyes narrowed, her arms crossing tighter with every word. She lectured me about new standards and property values, claiming Buddy's presence violated multiple HOA covenants. When I asked to see these rules in writing, her face flushed a dangerous red. "I don't need to justify myself to someone flouting our protocols," she snapped, whipping out her phone and dialing 911 with theatrical flair, reporting a security threat involving an unauthorized animal and a non-compliant resident. I stood there, dumbfounded, as Buddy yawned, oblivious to the absurdity. 20 minutes later, 2 cops showed up, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Officer Reynolds, a seasoned veteran, had the weary patience of someone who'd mediated too many neighbor spats. His partner, Officer Lee, fought back a smirk as they took in the scene. Me, in sweatpants, with a senior dog who looked about as threatening as a teddy bear. I showed them Buddy's vet records and explained the inheritance. Reynolds, glancing at his tablet, made a comment that changed everything. "This address doesn't seem to fall under HOA jurisdiction in our system." As they left, Lee handed me his card, suggesting I check the property's legal status. Cynthia, lurking by her window, clearly expected me to be carted off in cuffs. Instead, I saw Buddy tilt his head toward a small office building down the street, his ears perked like he'd caught a scent. That night, as I mulled over Reynolds' words, my old instincts from years as an insurance fraud investigator kicked in. Cynthia's over-the-top reaction wasn't just about a dog. She was hiding something. The next morning, I spread every document tied to Evelyn's house across my dining table: deeds, tax records, anything I could find. Buddy lay nearby, occasionally nudging my leg as I worked. The deed jumped out. Evelyn bought the house in 1993, 14 years before the Willow Creek HOA formed in 2007. Digging deeper, I found the HOA's charter, which stated only properties bought after 2007 were automatically enrolled. My house, and a few others, were grandfathered out free from their rules. Cynthia had no authority over me, and any lawyer worth their salt would have spotted this in minutes. But I didn't stop there. Her 911 stunt screamed desperation, so I turned my attention to the HOA office, that squat building Buddy kept staring at. Public records revealed it was built in 2009 on land zoned as public green space, meant to stay undeveloped. Permit signatures looked suspiciously identical across years, a red flag from my fraud hunting days. Cynthia wasn't just power-hungry, she was covering up something big. Meanwhile, Buddy's behavior grew stranger. He'd paced the fence line near the HOA office, sniffing with a focus I hadn't seen in years. One evening, he scratched at the back door until I let him out, then bolted to the fence and started digging like a dog possessed. 10 minutes later, he unearthed a sealed plastic bag containing white powder and a digital scale, obviously not gardening supplies. My heart sank. Buddy wasn't just any dog. Before Evelyn adopted him, he'd spent 4 years as a narcotics K-9 with the Chicago PD, retired early due to a slight limp. His nose was still sharp, and he'd been trying to tell me something was wrong. I called Detective Alvarez, an old contact from my fraud cases, who arrived after dark to avoid prying eyes. He confirmed the powder was cocaine, packaged for distribution, not personal use. The hiding spot, so close to the HOA office, suggested someone with neighborhood access was involved. Alvarez found signs of regular foot traffic and hidden cameras in the landscaping, pointing to a sophisticated operation. As we watched the office that night, a dark SUV pulled up. 2 men unloaded packages, and then Cynthia herself stepped out, directing them with crisp gestures. Alvarez snapped photos, his jaw tight. This wasn't about HOA rules. Cynthia was running a drug ring. I drafted a legal notice, armed with proof of my property's exemption, and hand-delivered it to Cynthia's door, copying the police and city. Her response was a social media blitz, painting me as a reckless outsider threatening Willow Creek's safety. She posted photos of my house, circling Buddy in red, ranting about feral animals and plummeting property values. Neighbors I'd never met chimed in, whipped into a frenzy. By Saturday, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting to address threats to our harmony. I crashed it, folder in hand, and laid out the truth. My property's exemption, the forged HOA documents, the illegal office construction. Gasps filled the room as I showed evidence of Cynthia's fraud. When a neighbor asked about the green space violation, Cynthia's stammering excuses fell apart. The meeting dissolved in chaos, but Buddy wasn't done. That night, he dug up another bag, more drugs, more equipment. The stakes were clear. Cynthia wasn't just a bully. She was a criminal mastermind. Cynthia's next move was a lawsuit, accusing me of defamation, conspiracy, and endangering the community, demanding $20,000 in Buddy's removal. It was a desperate gambit, but it backfired. My lawyer, Rachel Kim, saw her claims as an opening to expose the drug operation. Councilman David Lee, investigating HOA abuses, revealed Cynthia had forged city permits, too, and her HOA's finances showed unexplained millions far beyond normal fees. Alvarez's raid, timed with our court date, uncovered 15 pounds of cocaine and ledgers tying Cynthia to a regional drug network. In court, Rachel dismantled Cynthia's case, and Alvarez's testimony, capped by news of the raid, left the room stunned. Cynthia's polished facade crumbled as she was cuffed, her empire exposed as a front for crime. Neighbors who'd backed her sat speechless, some later apologizing for buying her lies. The city seized the HOA office, and I bought it cheap, driven by a discovery in a forgotten file. Evelyn's 1994 plan for a dog shelter on that very land, rejected by the HOA. Over 6 months, we transformed the den of corruption into the Evelyn and Buddy Memorial Dog Shelter, a haven for homeless dogs with a clinic and training areas. Buddy, now 14, greeted every visitor, his gentle spirit calming nervous rescues. Neighbors, once divided, rallied, volunteering, fundraising, rebuilding trust. Even Cynthia, from prison, sent a letter admitting she'd been coerced into the drug trade but grew greedy, thanking me for ending her nightmare. Councilman Lee passed Buddy's law, curbing HOA overreach citywide. At our first Paws Festival, with Buddy wagging for every kid, I felt Evelyn's dream alive. From a 911 call over a dog to toppling a criminal empire, Buddy and I proved that courage and a good nose can turn corruption into hope.